drama queens and heroes acting out there on a silver screen. Come grab a seat, popcorn is on me.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
Hello, welcome to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T manning the second here. Very happy to have back on the show Eric Marchen. Eric, you and I go back a few years. We met at the Critics' Choice Awards. We were sharing the same table. We kind of hit it off. And we had a chance to connect over the years since then, and even had a chance to spend some time together with Martin Scorsese and De Niro and Pacino, and that was pretty nice. And just glad to have you back, especially talking about TIFF
Yes.
and the Toronto International Film Festival. And for those that may not remember, this is kind of it's home for you. It's home for you being there.
It is. It really is. It's one of those festivals that, you know, it's comforting in a way where every year you look forward to the fall festival season kind of launching and award season on top of that. And then you have a community of film lovers that you get to see maybe only once a year at this time, and get to catch up with people that maybe you have a parasocial relationship online with through you know, Twitter or whatever it's being called now, and things like that. But it's always such a great experience to enjoy a festival in any capacity. And obviously this is, you know, the Toronto International Film Festival, the 48th annual edition. This was something that a lot of people were very concerned about going in because of the writers and actors strike and how that would affect or change things. And I think there were some changes in terms of the atmosphere and how presentations were sort of brought to the forefront. And you see that very much in, you know, how a lot of programmers would kind of integrate their conversations, or if you would have actors, they would be there because of interims, not waivers, interims. You have to make that very clear. Jessica Chastain did in a really wonderful on-camera interview with a CBC reporter, and made that statement in terms of the interim, not the waiver, when, you know, you're working with an independent production. So
explain the difference between that, because we have been hearing throughout the past month or so the word waivers as it relates to certain acting talent, especially being able to spend some time talking on camera. Adam Driver and Michael Mann, a couple of the great examples recently who got a chance to do that. So explain those differences.
Yeah, so you're referencing also as well Ferrari, which played at Venice, and you know quite a bit about Michael Mann because you worked on The Last of the Mohicans. So so I can't say it as eloquently as Jessica Chastain did. Eli Glasner interviewed her on the red carpet, so you can go to his social media accounts and find that interview. But basically, a waiver means you owe somebody something, that you're participating in something because you owe them this, you know, and an interim is more, there's a transparency with the people that made it and also the production team itself. So you're getting access or going on to, you know, a press circuit or a film festival to talk about the film, or to talk about, in this case, the strikes, and have that opportunity. And I think, you know, people like Jessica Chastain and Adam Driver have really opened up that conversation and saying, okay, well, if companies like Neon or independent productions that don't even have, you know, distributors working with them can be this transparent in a matter like this, why can't the streamers and major studios, you know, be more accommodating to actors and writers? Because these are the people that help make the movies, the TV shows, the content that people love. And you have to give credit where credit's due. Pay your writers, pay your actors, pay them what they're worth and what they deserve. And that will make the ecosystem a better place for everybody. And I know I'm on a soapbox here a little bit with that, but I think that is so important, because you feel that at a festival like TIFF, which is very much, you know, a movie-driven festival and culture, but the stars are so important to selling a film and getting people through the door to see something that maybe they wouldn't be necessarily interested in or, know about before,
Right.
having somebody like an Adam Driver or Jessica Chastain say like, hey, come see this little art house movie or
Right.
see this weird experimental film or this director that might open up a new avenue for you.
So you have been to TIFF for how many years have you been?
Oh boy. Okay, so the first festival that I attended was actually with my dad back in 2005. The movie I wanted to see so badly was David Cronenberg's A History of Violence. And unfortunately, I didn't know how the system worked because it's changed. There used to be a lottery system where you would get tickets for, it's open to the public. I think that's an important thing as well because it's not just press. This is a festival for the people. So, when I first went, that was the movie I really wanted to see because I was getting into film and I was in high school at this point, and David Cronenberg was a filmmaker that I felt very proud represented Canada because he was an auteur filmmaker, dealt with body horror and strange kind of horror genre elements and things like that. So History of Violence was his return to form in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, I didn't get a ticket to that movie because that was the hottest ticket in town, and because David Cronenberg is from Toronto, so it was impossible. So the movie I ended up seeing, and it cost $200 for 2 tickets, and it was like a gala presentation. Was for Tommy Lee Jones's film, The Three Burials of Melquiades Estrada, which is actually a really solid little film. It's a grueling movie at times, especially given the subject matter, but Jones's direction and the performances from him and Barry Pepper are fantastic. And so that was my first foray into the festival.
Yeah.
And since then, I've been going every year. I've been covering it professionally since 2010.
Wow.
And it does change a lot. It does change over the years. It's fascinating now to watch a festival that started even before my time as the Festival of Festivals, which was bringing world cinema to Toronto. And in the years since, I'd say maybe like the 2000s, TIFF has kind of become a launching pad for award season. And so you have a lot of these movies that are going to be introduced into the conversation when it comes to Oscars, Critics' Choice Awards, Golden Globes back in the day, even though they're very problematic now. So things like that, it was a great launching pad. But I think that's also changed quite a bit. And I think the negative side of TIFF this year, not including the strike aspect, which is something that a lot of people just, it's out of their control, and you just have to understand that, there are people out there right now that are fighting for their livelihoods, and you have to support, be there in solidarity in some way. But the thing that's changed so much are festivals like Venice and Telluride coming before TIFF, or overlapping with it, and then New York afterwards. And those festivals have given TIFF a run for its money when it comes to what films are being secured and programmed for the festival and curated. So you have, a filmmaker like Yorgos Lanthimos, whose film Poor Things played Venice, it played Telluride, it played New York, it's playing Vancouver, the Vancouver Film Festival, but it didn't play TIFF. And you'll never know the internal issues with what's going on there or the behind the scenes aspects, but there's a moment of change, I think, that's going on right now with TIFF. 2 prominent programmers left. Bell, one of their lead sponsors, is leaving. There's been petitions by actors like Leonardo DiCaprio for TIFF to dump RBC because of their association with fracking. So this is a moment of change for TIFF. The 50th anniversary is just a couple years away, and it feels like TIFF's identity is in the sort of a new change or transition into something else. So I'll be fascinated to see how the strike impacts next year's festival, because I think it will have an even greater effect on what films are available next year.
So why do you think that is? Why do you think that it's going to impact next year? Because A lot of films are not being made right now.
Yes, and that's the thing, because you'll still have independent movies, getting those interims to go and be made. There's a bunch of smaller production companies, like I mentioned, the Neons, the A24s of the world, that will always be transparent when it comes to how they handle the business side of things, so the art can thrive. But I think once you get to this time next year, the fall festival season for TIFF will be from September 5th to the 15th in 2024. There might not be as many studio films, at least, in the gala and special presentation sections of TIFF. So TIFF is divided into different programs. You have special presentations, you have galas, you have Midnight Madness, Discovery, which is now Centerpiece, which is also a little bit confusing because Centerpiece sounds like you're kind of centering one movie or a group of films the way that New York does with movies like Priscilla or May December or Ferrari. And that's another movie actually that didn't play TIFF that I found very surprising, was Priscilla, because it's shot in Toronto, and it's played every other festival for the most part. So there's this moment now of questioning things, and I always look forward to this festival. There's a lot of great movies that played for the 48th annual edition, but there's this kind of question mark there of what TIFF will be moving forward, especially in the next couple of years, but even more so in its future. And I'm still hopeful for what it should be or could be or potentially as it's evolving. But there's also a part of me that's thinking, okay, well, there's something going on there that I can't really, talk to, because I don't know those inner workings. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But you can clearly see that there's something, because why would so many movies that are playing these other festivals, and it's not just like simply, one film was playing exclusively at Venice or one movie's exclusively playing at New York, they were playing all of them. We mentioned Ferrari, we mentioned Priscilla, Poor Things. All of these films are playing everywhere else. The only movie that didn't play any fall festival, that didn't come back, that a lot of people were surprised about, was Killers of the Flower Moon, which played at Cannes and played out of competition. And a lot of people thought, okay, well, this is going to play at Telluride. This is going to play at New York. This might play at TIFF, because TIFF kind of had a big year last year with The Fabelmans playing. Steven Spielberg brought The Fabelmans to TIFF, and TIFF really needed it at that moment because it was coming back into the public again. It wasn't virtual as it was in previous years because of the pandemic. It was trying to make that statement that we're back in person again. So this year kind of felt almost like a little bit of a footnote compared to last year's festival.
Interesting. Really interesting. We are joined by Eric Marchen. We are talking the Toronto International Film Festival, TIFF. And we didn't say this, but Toronto is your home as well, correct?
Yeah, so I live about 40 minutes outside of Toronto in the Durham region in Whitby, and so I'm always traveling to Toronto. Every week, there's a new screening or screenings for press, and that's where they always have them, whether it be at the Scotiabank Theatre, the TIFF Bell Lightbox, even Yonge and Dundas, Varsity, within sort of that core downtown area and a little bit outside of it. It's a thriving film community, and it's very much you can see that during TIFF. I think that was the one thing that didn't change during this festival, is that you had people that were still coming out to go and see movies.
Awesome. After this quick intermission, we're going to come back and talk to Eric about some of his favorite films, performances, and maybe some surprises. So stick around right here on Meet Me at the Movies.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a
Education is our most powerful tool to improve and change our world. Hi, I'm Rhonda Benfield, your host for School Matters. Join me for a new program every other week with information from and about the students and staff of Cleveland County Schools. Discover what our schools are doing to challenge students and help them reach their full potential. You can catch us on Spectrum Cable Channel 19 or stream us live on C19.TV.
Hey, I'm David Allen, back as Armchair Quarterback host for 2023.
I'm Guy Suttle from C19 TV Sports.
And I'm Rob Roop from KTCBroadcasting.com.
What's in store on the gridiron for 2023? Each week, we look at all 4 Cleveland County High School football teams, Burns, Crest, Kings Mountain, and Shelby. We will look at what happened the week before and look ahead at what's coming up this week.
And we'll also discuss ACC, SEC, and Gardner-Webb college football.
And of course, the NFL and those Carolina Panthers.
So don't miss another great season of football right here on Armchair Quarterback on C19 TV and online at C19.tv.
Hi, I'm Shara Miller, the host of Artworks. Each month we bring to you wonderful, talented artists from here in Cleveland County and the region. We have artists, we have potters, we have painters, we have musicians, we have actors. We just have wonderful artists that come to you and tell you about all that they're doing, their creativity, what inspires them. Join me here on Artworks each month on C19. You can also watch us online at C19.tv.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Hello, welcome back to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning, the second here, hanging out with Eric Marchen, a good friend from a few years ago. We continue to keep in touch, and I continue to rely on Eric's wisdom and expertise in a lot of ways. And you can find him on Cinema Scene. And I used to have a radio show called Cinema Scene, but it was spelled completely different. But so that's we'll make sure at the bottom of the screen, if you're watching this, you will see the ID pop up. And if you're listening to this through radio, make sure you check out our description on where you can find Eric and his work. We're talking TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, the 48th annual that wrapped up not too long ago. And Eric, I want to definitely get you to talk about some of the standout films and performances that really spoke to you, that you're like, okay, I'm so glad I got a chance to experience that. Maybe it wasn't that Cronenberg film you wanted to see at the very beginning when you first started decades ago, but what spoke to you this time at TIFF?
You know, I think the film that and again, I don't want to oversell this or scare people away from seeing it, because I think it's an important film to see. I think that it's the best film of the year. I think that it's going to change the way that you look at movies portraying the Holocaust, and how I think filmmakers need to kind of experiment with the form, but also be respectful to what happened and not selling it on awards or exploitation in that way. And that is Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest. Jonathan Glazer is a director who has only made a handful of films, but has been kind of prominent with a community of filmmakers like Spike Jonze, David Fincher. He kind of started in music videos and advertising and made movies like Under the Skin and Birth and Sexy Beast. The Zone of Interest, even though there are moments of style in it, it is restrained, and that's the point of the film. It's a very calculated movie. It's a very clinical film, and it portrays a commandant and his family living an idyllic, almost Sound of Music-esque lifestyle next door to Auschwitz. And when you watch this movie, it handles Martin Amos's book, which is a very loose adaptation, and the author actually just passed away at the Cannes premiere, or a couple days after the Cannes premiere. So when you're watching a film like this, it's haunting and disturbing, but what makes it so disturbing is how these people treat other human beings as though they were garbage, as though it was a waste management facility. And that mundanity, that apathy, that complicit nature is so disturbing and is so frightful, but it's done in a way that is just matter of fact, that I think it takes away the monstrous element of these Nazis. Because if you give these people a supernatural coda or call them monsters, you give them too much power. When you portray them as people, you can hold them accountable. Wow. And that's what this movie is doing in such a frank manner, that when you watch it, you are completely immersed in what you are seeing on the screen, chilled to the bone, but you understand that Glazer has considered every aspect of this movie when it comes to how to portray this in the most humane way possible without it being considered an awards movie. And it actually makes you upset or angry about how films prior to this, Hollywood movies, have portrayed the Holocaust, whether it be films like The Reader or Jojo Rabbit, which are films that are angling for awards consideration and aren't considering the mass atrocities of what happened to so many people's lives. This is a film that considers those aspects. And the closest comparison, I would say, more recently, something like Son of Saul. You have the Indonesian films, The Act of Killing and The Look of Silence. And then before that, Come and See, films that are dealing with subject matter, Night and Fog, movies that are dealing with this subject matter in a very mature, considerate, thoughtful way, that aren't afraid to show you the truth, but at the same time not exploit it. And when you watch something like this, you realize how important film is as a medium to tell a story as important as this is.
The Zone of Interest, and it is an A24 film, and
Yes.
A24 definitely a studio that's not afraid to take chances and explore art in ways that maybe other studios aren't willing to do, other than a few. So A24, The Zone of Interest, the name of that film. What about some performances that stuck out to you, either in a positive or negative light?
Well, speaking of The Zone of Interest, there is an actor that we'll probably be talking a lot about through that film, but also in Anatomy of a Fall, and that's Sandra Uhler, who a lot of people might know in terms of the critical side. A few years ago, she was the lead in Tony Erdmann. In Anatomy of a Fall, she plays a German novelist who's accused of killing her husband at their French chalet. It's part Law and Order, it's part procedural, but it is one of the most compelling, engrossing on-screen performances of the year. You are completely transfixed by what she is doing, every decision she's making, whether it be in French or in English or in German. And the point of the movie is never finding out the answer, whether or not she's guilty or innocent. It's the ambiguity of the story that makes it so compelling. And when you watch her making decisions of how she is going to talk about, you know, her life with her husband before the incident, the calculations and the subtle gestures are all there, but it's also sometimes playful. It's sometimes very strange. It has that kind of French brevity to it in a way that I think maybe some people will not be expecting from a courtroom drama. So I think Sandra Uhler is definitely, giving one of the best performances of the year, and one we will be talking about and dissecting and thinking about. There is an aspect of the movie itself where I feel it has a natural conclusion. I compared it actually to Speed. I think when Speed gets off the bus, the film should end. I think when the courtroom drama ends in Anatomy of a Fall, the movie should end, but it does go on a little bit longer without spoilers, but it does feel like there is a natural conclusion to it. But that being said, the performance is so strong that you can't help but be completely engrossed by it. And I do think, you have these two films that played at Toronto, but, were introduced at Cannes. And I think that's another conversation that was early on, where TIFF's identity this year seems to be lacking a little bit, because
Interesting.
There are other festivals that played these movies before. And so you have, a film like Anatomy of a Fall that's being reintroduced, but it didn't play at TIFF first. And there are films in the past that have played at TIFF that have gone on to become something bigger. Even, winning the People's Choice Award with something like Slumdog Millionaire, or, films that would go on to become big deals later, like The Hurt Locker or Hunger, things like that. So it's very much changing in that way.
Gotcha. Any disappointments? Anything you really wanted to love and it just didn't happen?
Oh boy. Well, there was a film that stood out like no other, and that movie was Chris Pine's Pool Man. It's his directorial debut, auteur filmmaker Chris Pine. He is still my favorite Chris. But I will say this. Him doing and the movie is very self-aware about it. It's metatextual and kind of playing with the notion of this is Chinatown, but speaking in platitudes. I've never seen so many critics, because I saw this at a P&I screening, a press and industry screening, leave 30 to 40 minutes through the film, and the rest of the critics that were there, these are people that are quiet, these are people that are respectful, actually be rowdy, actually talk back to the screen and saying, come on, really? Why?
Wow.
How are you doing this? This is something and I don't want to oversell it as well, because it is a boring movie and it's a film that has no real identity of its own other than what it's sort of saying about, the modern world as a whole. But you can find so many other movies that are talking about social commentary and looking at the world as it is. This has no style to it.
Wow.
It is just completely off the rails through the entire thing. And yes, the most sinful aspect of the film is that it's just really, really mundane. And watching this, I was just thinking to myself, because that same day I saw Anna Kendrick's directorial debut, Woman of the Hour, which is about a serial killer that was on the dating show, or the dating game, pardon me. And we have this new director who has a voice and an idea. It's not a perfect film by any means, but it's one that feels like it understands how to build tension and play with sound design. And you go from that, and you go to a filmmaker who has no idea what he's doing and is just flying by the seat of his pants. And it just is embarrassing. I've never been more embarrassed for an actor turned director in a very long time, actually. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got just a couple minutes. Any final thoughts you want to make sure you share about the 48th annual Toronto International Film Festival?
Yeah, I think if you've never been to Toronto, whether it be locally, internationally, nationally, give it a chance. I think it's one of those film festivals that everybody should do at least once, be a part of it, even if it's just for a weekend, even if it's for a few days. You do have a lot of international press coming in for the first week or so, and then it kind of dies down in the second week, and it's kind of about catching up with movies that maybe you missed in the second half or were sold out or couldn't get into, and then you have another chance to watch them. You get to watch them in movies, in theaters that are otherwise never used for theatrical distribution, whether it be The Princess of Wales, whether it be The Royal Alexander. These are older cinemas with classic seating that feel regal and pristine and feel like you're being transported back to a time where classical theater was being performed, but you're watching modern movies, and it's just there's something about that can't be articulated, and you have to experience it. I love the festival so much, and I am critical of it because I think being critical of something, and especially when it comes to change, is important, but it is the thing I always look forward to every year. And there are so many great filmmakers and movies and community as a whole that you get to discover or, be brought back to in one way or another, that you just feel like you're home. And that's something that I really appreciate and cherish. And I feel like I'm a part of a community every September. And it's just something I would not trade in for the world.
Awesome. Eric, thanks, man. So good to see you. Appreciate everybody who spends time with us, whether that's through C19 TV or whether they're listening from radio through WGWG. We really do appreciate you. We know you have a lot of other things to do, and to take the time to spend with us, we can't thank you enough. You can always email us, info@c19.tv, if you have questions or comments or suggestions. And until next time, for Meet Me at the Movies, I'm Noel T. Manning II. That's a wrap.
Gladly fill you in. We'll tell about the happy and the sad ones. We'll talk about the good ones and the bad ones. Many films to view till we meet again.